that there is a difference in the two. Okay, let me leave that, Chair. Minister, let's start with the audio that was played as part of your evidence. Firstly, I was concerned of Chair, that the minister advised Mr. Nkabinde to record General Mkhwanazi without the consent or knowledge of General Mkhwanazi. So I thought it would be important that we consult some necessary and relevant legal prescripts in that regard. But I also saw that actually the RICA Act does allow one to record a communication if they are part of. So it gives two instances, two conditions, Chair, that if that person is part of that conversation and that person is not using that to commit a criminal offense. So I was quite worried, Maqingwana. But this is the point where we've got different ways of interpreting what was happening. General Mkhwanazi testified and said, Mr. Nkabinde said to him, there may be unknown people who have tapped in his communication devices without his knowledge. Now, when you testify that you would have advised the chief of staff to make a recording of the conversation between him and General Mkhwanazi. What is your take on that?
Now, what I said, and also inclusive of the correction of the hitch that happened in the other room, on the second, when they started talking between them, General Mkhwanazi and Nkabinde, they talked about the things that I indicated, and that included on the first day that what I regarded as a threat, that if Minister Mkhunu believes that he is clean, he should proceed with this. That was said on the first day. But on the 5th, when they spoke on the 3rd and 4th, and then they spoke on the 5th. Then that is when the recording started. Now, when they start the recording, they acknowledge what they had discussed on the 2nd, as you heard the other time. That needed to be clarified. Yes, they did speak about a supposedly screenshot conversation between them, but they themselves say they didn't know how that came about, but it had omission of things that they thought anyone who would have recorded them would have included them, but excluded some of those things. So you say you are concerned about that. We'll leave it to them and their recording. I was merely sharing the recording on my side.
Okay, you say part of what would have made you interested for a recording of conversations is the fact that you got briefed by the chief of staff that General Mkhwanazi is very angry and making threats. So you advised the chief of staff that it would actually be adequate that from now on you record the conversation. So you brought evidence in a form of an audio that part of the threats that you think that are being said in the audio is that someone says if you are clean, you can proceed and all those things. But I don't know what other honorable members would have heard in the audio, but what I heard in the audio was actually the sentiments of your chief of staff, Mr. Nkabinde, saying those things of being clean, not clean, and all those things. Did you finally get the part that which you wanted us to hear so that we are able to understand better your argument in regard to this. You'll recall that even Honorable Malema did advise that when you come back today, you must actually direct us exactly where we must go, so that we understand your argument better.
The part that I was interested in was where such a statement was being made between them and then recorded. Now, it's only in reference, it turns out, because that part was said before they started recording. But it is referred to in the conversation on the 5th and acknowledged by them when they remind each other that whoever would have screenshot them when they were discussing would not have missed out on this part and that part. For instance, on the first part where there was talk of fight back, where there was talk of if the minister is clean. That conversation had not been or was not recorded, and I thought part thereof was actually recorded. That's why I brought it here. But it turns out that it is only in reference. So my answer to you is that I thought that that had been recorded. It turns out it had not been recorded. It just comes as a reference, rather.
Okay. Does the minister understand that as things stands, given that the response, the ad hoc committee doesn't have the evidence of threats as things stands now?
The ad hoc committee has a reference as it stands now, and I would advise that if it pleases the ad hoc committee, you can get Mr. Nkabinde to come and say it for himself. So it shouldn't just be, just because the recording, the actual recording is only in reference, and therefore that's the end of the game. It's not the end. And Nkabinde is alive, he can be asked to come so that he says it himself, if you so wish.
He's alive and kicking.
He's alive and kicking, just like...
No, it's fine.
Honorable Nqola,
Yes, Chair.
you know, this morning when we started, from this table, we made an announcement to members of the ad hoc committee that our support team followed up with the minister and his team to forward the extract that he wanted us to play on that day. And as at the time of resumption of proceedings this morning, that extract has not been forwarded to us. So it is not us. It was him who said it last week on Friday, that he wanted us to hear that extract, and it was not there in the recording. And you are very right that when we rose, Honorable Malema said, please make sure that whatever piece of information you have, you want to bring us, make it available. So it has not been made available, Honorable Minister. And the question that the Honorable Member is asking, he is justified to say that as it stands now, the ad hoc committee doesn't have that extract, which you promised that it will be made available.
Yes, Chair, and I give a reason that I was under an impression that it had been recorded when the recording of their conversation had started, and it turns out that it had not started on the first day when that was mentioned. It only started on the 5th day.
Yeah.
Yes.
I take the explanation, but the fact remains, as we proceed now, the extract is not here before us.
It is not here before us as intended, except to add that it is in reference, only in reference.
Yeah, we agree. If we use the primary and the secondary, we will say the primary is not here.
I would
that so?
agree.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, there is a hand.
Honorable Malema.
I'm on the same point. The minister, because you are putting it as if we should have the recording. The minister does not have a recording. He told us he's got a recording and he wants us to play. That's number one. Number two, he wanted us to listen to something he never listened to himself. Because it's not there. And that's what you should be asking the minister. Not that where we are now, we don't have a recording. That recording doesn't exist. Let's agree there. That there was no such a recording where Mkhwanazi was threatening the minister. And that's why I was interested that he must bring that thing here, because we want to hear for real if minister was threatened. Minister comes, that thing is not here, and then we speak in different languages. We must put it on record that the minister doesn't have that recording, and therefore that recording doesn't exist.
You are absolutely correct, Honorable Member. And that is how we are proceeding. That is understood, Honorable Minister. We are proceeding from that premise that the evidence that you promised has not been presented before the ad hoc committee.
Again, yes, I've said so.
Thank you so much. Honorable Nqola, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I think both yourself, Chair, and Honorable Malema agree with me that as things stand now, we don't have evidence relating to threats leveled against the minister. I think let's pass the minister and go to your directive of the 31st of December 2024. There is an underlined word there that says immediately. And we discussed this thing with...
the word?
Immediately.
Okay.
And we discussed this thing with a lot of witnesses, so as to get what would have been their understanding of immediately. I remember General Spear said, immediately does not mean immediately now. We were left confused, all of us. So you say correctly so that part of what is contained in your directive is the fact that there must be a preliminary report on the 20th of January 2025 from the 31st. So your immediate now means that 20 days. Was that the intention of the immediate? The immediately.
Most of let me just go straight to your question. That immediate has a context, and that context is contained in the letter of directives. There's no way you can make a mistake out of it. It's contextualized. And the words that decisively form the context thereof is the call or the directive inclusive of the directive to bring or to refer that there would be a preliminary report. In fact, it was saying you will bring the preliminary report on the 20th. So that immediate, if you remove preliminary report, you remove it, and you remove what was also part of the directive in the form of the UNESCO, then immediate takes another context. But if you bring in those two, bring in a context that although it was immediate, but there was a meeting that was coming with what? A preliminary report indicating clearly that you are not talking about something to be switched off, and that's the end of the day you go and sleep. There was to be a preliminary report. There was to be a UNESCO report. Then that is the context concretely, without any mistake.
Okay, so indeed that immediate did not mean immediately. Do you agree with me that PKTT is born of the president's interventions to scale down political killings?
Yes, that was a political intervention by the president.
Is it your evidence that, given that, you found it adequate not to consult the president prior the decision was taken?
I would not agree with you exactly on that because it was pitched at ministerial level via the interministerial level, which is no longer obtaining in the 7th administration. It was not pitched at presidential level. It was pitched at ministerial level via the interministerial, via the minister who was chairing, but where there was interministerial, and there is no longer any ministerial. Okay. So I won't agree with you.
Okay, let me rephrase my question, Minister. Was President Cyril Ramaphosa informed or briefed or consulted prior the taking of the decision to dissolve the political killings task team?
You swallow a lot of words such that I don't hear.
It might be the mic. I'm saying, let me rephrase it. Was President Cyril Ramaphosa, as a person whose intervention are as a result of the PKTT establishment, consulted, informed, or briefed about the intended dissolution prior the decision was taken?
No.
He was not consulted. Okay. The president also established the interministerial committee, which you say in the 7th administration there is no interministerial committee. Maybe if you can brief us, when was it dissolved by the president, who appointed it? When were the closing reports being submitted, so that we better understand that if there were terms of reference, perhaps that guide it not to surpass the 6th administration. Has there been such?
What's the question?
I'm saying the question is, you say the interministerial committee is non-existent in the 7th administration. So I'm saying, did the person who appointed the interministerial committee dissolve the interministerial committee? 2, when were the closing reports of the IMC submitted to the president so as to seal the closing of the IMC? 3, were there terms of reference that say the interministerial committee only exists in the 6th administration?
Yeah, Honorable Nqola, you must not drown my witness with a bombardment of questions. May you please take your
one by one, Chair.
Your questions one by one.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So apologies, Martin.
No, I understand all of it.
Okay, no, that's fine. He says he can take it in that fashion, Chair.
Just saying, go easy. You have time. I mean.
Okay, Chair.
My statement, that is my affidavit, only refers to the 7th administration not having an interministerial committee on the National Political Killings Task Team that was established in 2018 to focus in the main KZN. It doesn't go beyond that to say there was a report, there was closure of the report, and this is the report. It only makes reference that when I got appointed in the 7th administration as Minister of Police, there is no interministerial committee.
Is it the evidence of the minister that only the PKTT was carried over from the 6th administration to the 7th administration, not the IMC? Because the establishment of the PKTT was in the 6th administration as well. So it was carried over to the 7th administration. So are you saying now, Minister, that only the PKTT was carried over to another administration, but not the IMC?
I'm not saying so. That's why I indicate that it worries me to a point where I believe that there's something illegal about PKTT as it stands now, because it was renewed or extended annually up to 2022. So that is the state of my mind as I talk to you and now, that the PKTT was established and got extended annually, and the interministerial doesn't exist in the 7th administration.
Okay. In fact, it was established in the 5th administration, 2018. The 6th administration started in 2019. Then the 7th administration started in 2024. So it was carried over 3 successive terms. Now, that's why we don't understand it when the minister says, then therefore the interministerial committee is non-existent. But it's fine. Let's pass that part. What then becomes the status of the political killing system now?
Currently. Well, that's the question that I would rather not respond to, because I'm not in office. I'm on leave, as you're aware.
Chair, we have had witnesses who testified differently on the status of the PKTT in respect of the letter written by the minister. Because the reason we're talking about the status of the PKTT is on the basis of the letter written by the minister. Now, from the 31st of December 2024 to the 20th of January, where a report was supposed to have been submitted, 2 months later when you were taken to leave, are you saying you are unable to tell this committee that the status of the PKTT now is this and that? Because the evidence by General Mkhwanazi is that the PKTT is alive and kicking. The evidence by General Masemola is that the PKTT is alive and kicking. The evidence by Sibiya is that the PKTT is operating illegally somewhere in a corner.
Yeah, Sibiya is also General Sibiya.
General Sibiya, yes, sorry, Chair. The evidence from General Sibiya is that PKTT has got a very questionable status now. And all these testimonies, Minister, come from the letter authored by you on the 31st of December. So we thought it is important that we get an information to ask from the author of the letter, what then becomes the status of the PKTT now? Because we are receiving contradicting statements about it.
I understand. I wrote the directives. The directives were responded to by the National Commissioner, in the main, proposing or suggesting that it should be on the winding up, it should be on a phased approach. And it details that phased approach in a number of platforms, including on the 5th, including on the 6th. And then the process of winding out is then underway. While it is under discussion, as would have been intended by the preliminary report and the report at UNESCO, then there's a press briefing on the 6th, and then there's a commission as we speak. So what is there at the moment?
I can't see the witness. Thank you. You can proceed with those.
What is there at the moment in terms of my response to you is that there is a process of a discussion which has not been completed while PKTT continues to operate.
Okay. That answer is quite satisfying. Now, Section 206, subsection 1 of the Constitution accords you powers in respect of the service. And it gives us two major obligations that you have. The first of which is being responsible for the policing policy. The second of which is being responsible for policing needs. So, would you say the directives of the 31st qualify to be policing policy, or they are just policing needs?
Or they qualify to be what? Second one?
Policing needs. Section 206 speaks about policing policy and policing needs. So, does it qualify as a policing policy or a policing needs?
The directives are linked to Section 207 too, because it talks about policing policy. And of course, in 6, there's also policing needs, but in 207 too, there's also the issue of directives. In other words, the Constitution talks about policing policy, but it talks about directives as well. Stand on their own as part of the duties or powers, if you like, of a minister. And therefore, it was part of the powers that can be exercised by a minister while in office. Not necessarily falling within policy or policing needs, because all of them are written on their own. Policing policy is on its own. Policing needs of a province on its own, and then directives on their own.
Okay, that's fine.
That's my understanding.
So the letter is written on the spirit of 2072, not 2061.
No, but I would say in practice you can't then separate to a point of creating Chinese walls on policing policy and needs of a province. Neither can you build a Chinese wall between the two and the directives. Operationally, they are not necessarily mutually exclusive, as it were.
Okay, but I'm asking because also 2061
Yes.
actually requires you to consult provinces.
Yes,
Yeah, so that's why I was asking.
yes.
You also, as part of your evidence, presented to that committee a new organogram that is meant to restructure the organizational design, architecture, and all those things. When was it adopted?
It was adopted in 2019.
It was adopted in 2019, not in 2025.
Pardon?
Not in 2025.
It was adopted in 2019. It was adopted in 2024.
2024. not 2025.
When I was already in office, when I started looking at the organogram. So in other words, 2024 was, in broad terms, an endorsement of the work that had been done, but it now included the need to implement. But in the main, yeah, it was adopted twice.
Okay. So the the restructuring of the task teams, including the PKTT, stems from the adopted organogram
Of 2019.
of 2019. Do task teams really or normally get to be part of an organizational structure, or they are just temporal arrangement?
Not at all. They are temporal arrangements. And in the case of National Political Killings Task Team, it's regarded as a task team, which is also referred to as a project. It's time-bound. That's why after 6 months of its existence, it was assessed and it was extended. And then extended up until 2022. It's because it is understood and actually a practice. The task teams are task-orientated. In other words, they are created for a particular task, and there's time. And in this instance, even though it was a budget, it was a project. There's not dedicated a budget, as it were. It takes from the budget that is already allocated, and you allocate it for that particular period and for those activities. Yes, it was like that.
So they are naturally not part of an organizational structure because they are project-based.
Not part of the organizational structure.
Then why does the minister use the adopted organogram as a basis for the dissolution of a task team that does not form part of that organizational structure?
It is precisely because when the structure was reviewed, it was reviewed with conscious understanding that you are entering an era of specialized units in SAPS to make sure that you are able to run an effective policing or effective policing in South Africa. You now need specialized units. Now, when they created those specialized units, they were framed or designed to perform all the duties that the task team was now operating to deal with what was emerging in KZN in particular. So inevitably, once the structure was fully operational, the structure was designed to take all those duties, and it was done consciously. It was not incidental. That's why you create murder and robbery. That's why in the report of the National Commissioner on the 5th and on the 6th, it is specifically mentioned that once the National Political Killings Task Team has been phased out, their duties would be specifically taken over by these units that have now been created. So that is where the correlation means. So if you keep it, you keep National Political Killings Task Team, when this structure is now fully functional, as was intended and also intended, now in 2024, signed in 2025, you will be doing more than duplication. And the problem that you are creating is the use of resources, which doesn't take into consideration that you're overstretched, but you have challenges for which you need a lot of money. You rather optimize on the money that you have and then be effective on the ground. That is the intention. That's where the correlation is.
Okay. In your directives of the 31st, amongst other reasons why you decided for the dissolution of the PKTT is that you do not think that it adds value anymore. we've already had 3 witnesses here in the ad hoc committee. The first was General Mkhwanazi. He has got a complete different view from that sentiment in your letter. The second one was General Semula. He also has testified and has a complete different view from what you have averred in your letter. The third one was General Spear. General Spear actually was the one who explained more to us that these are now the political killings trends in South Africa, and they have since decreased vehemently because of the work of the political killings task team. The fourth one, who disagrees with your argument, is President Cyril Ramaphosa. He's just had a public commentary on TV where we were speaking about the PKTT and the work it did in reducing the political killings in South Africa. So I'm mentioning these 4 people because they've got a different understanding of what you say adding value in your letter. Now I want to check if the minister from appointment has been able to at least summon a progress report in respect of the work of the political killings task team, so that what informs the decision of the minister is actually the progress report that the minister would have actually received from the officials of the department, whoever is obliged to do that.
The issue of, if you look at the report that was, or the comments that were made by CFO in 2024, they do indicate a monetary value on this matter. And you look at, yes, March 2024, when you look at what National Commissioner says in 2025, talking about the need to expedite the implementation now, because we're talking about implementation, it points to that. Now, on the differences, now, there's no problem with people airing their views and so on. But the fact that you cannot dispute, one is that from 2023, there's been substantial decrease of political killings. That is in the main in KZN. To a point where 2024, you speak about 7. In March 2025, you speak about 1. That's a decrease. But what is happening on the side of the budget is different, it's not in line. And it's all because you haven't done the justification for existence in terms of assessment. To say, let us review just like you were doing up to 2022. You're now talking about the budget. You're now talking about the budget. But the actual role is no longer as it was. The contribution, yes, that it has been a factor contributing to the decrease. No one is disputing that. But equally, it can't be disputed that the decrease, which was envisaged, together with other factors, because that's not the only factor. If you look at the climate general, even in KZN, it has changed substantially. Starting in 1996, 1994, when government no longer contributed in causing conflict among parties and people, and fighting people who are wanting democracy, when it wanted to maintain the status quo. Immediately democracy came in and led by the new government, the situation changed, and then there was gradually a decrease, then increasing. In 2018, up to 2021, you see increase in numbers. And numbers are supposed to inform you more than any other thing. So they start decreasing in 2023. Now it says to you, you are controlling resources. You have a say in the resources of SAPS. And there are flare-ups in other parts of the country, substantial flare-ups, murders. And in fact, even in KZN, murders are outside of political killings, are up in figures. But you ignore that in your analysis of allocation of resources. You say the team must continue, even though you have a structure which you must be implementing, even though organized crime, taxi-related violence, and personal murders are continuing and increasing, characterizing murders in KZN as being very high and among the 4 leading provinces in the country. But you continue as if all those things are not happening on the side. You couldn't do that. You had to adjust through assessments what is happening and adjust accordingly. Now, so the decrease is real. And then those differences that you are talking about are part of the process as intended, wind down so that we finally get to that level. Because what is happening, in my view, is no longer directed by needs of the budget. It's not taking into consideration that things have since changed. As I indicated earlier on, if you look at the much spoken about cases in Gauteng, they are being handled successfully. They are being handled successfully. Yes, the team has intervened, or it has been drafted in the form of 10 people. But it doesn't mean that those 3 cases were not handled properly or in any way problematic by organized unit in Gauteng, which is a clear indication that your organized units all over the country, which you need all over the country, can work. And they need reinforcement. They need to be empowered, just like in the Western Cape. So that is, I would want, in other words, I am arguing for a look at a number of factors at the same time, not just a national political killings task team in isolation. In fact, I could even go to the extent that if the intention of the minister is as alleged on the 6th of July to protect some criminal syndicates, one unit that you would have targeted is organized crime in Gauteng, who are handling the dockets, handling the cases, who are doing that with the National Political Killings Task Team only assisting. That is reality. That is factual. So we shouldn't isolate the National Political Killings Task Team and then from any other thing that is happening. We should look at all these matters together.
So is it the evidence of the minister that the not adding value part in the directives was solely looking at the available resources?
Was solely looking at?
It was in the context of the available resources. It was budgetary driven.
No, not alone, but related, yes, to the budget, but related on the need to strengthen the organized crime units, which we saw it. But other other areas of budget, like I indicated, to deal with ministerial priorities like technology, like vehicles and so on, there's an outcry. And perceptions are very strong out there in the public that we are not being as effective as we should be at community level. There are serious complaints about police stations, the way they are equipped or not equipped, even with members of the portfolio committee. So the pressure doesn't match our response at all. It doesn't. Our response is very weak, actually, in practice, compared to the demand in terms of how we should be distributing resources and how we should policing communities. And that is reality, it's a fact. So you needed to juggle your resources and your usage of resources so that you address some of the concerns of the public and even the imperatives of the 7th administration, where you need to make people feel safer than before. And you can't do it through the National Political Killings Task Team alone. You can't. It's impossible.
Okay. Has the minister summoned the chief financial officer of the South African Police Service to give a formal report on the expenditure trends of the PKTT, so that the minister is able to balance between the performance and spending before he takes the decision for dissolution or not dissolution, so that you get influenced, whatever decision you take, it's fine, but you get influenced by what would have been the expenditure trends and what would have been the performance trends, and also that it influences your decision making. So was there a summoning of such an expenditure report from the chief financial officer? And if the answer is in the affirmative, then how much has the political killings task team spent from crisscrossing the different financial years from its inception?
Now, the discussion that we had was on the first. The discussion that we had was on the second. It wasn't necessarily dedicated to either the finances or any other aspect, but we were aware of the expenditure trends. I became aware of the expenditure trends before the 31st. Now, if you look at that, I didn't even want to venture into those specific matters, but the impression that, or what word did I use? The observation that I made was that you would no longer comfortably spend these amounts on accommodation, spend these amounts on vehicles, spend these amounts on other related activities like S&T and related matters, on the task team, that is the National Political Killings Task Team, spend so much, even on accommodation, when in fact you are not spending something similar on organized crime, even in KZN, serious and violent crimes, even in KZN. You are having difficulty to explaining your outstanding dockets in South Africa at the moment. Serious difficulty. You are unable to. And other areas of work, why there are no vehicles and so on. Remember, the expenditure that you are doing in political killings task team is the same amount that you should be doing all over, but in an even way. So I did make an observation on that, including what CFO had said in March 2024, when she responded to the submission that had been made by General Kumalo, talking about the budget that had been cut on a number of occasions, and reducing the request from 94 million to 20 million at that time, and suggesting that beyond elections, please engage if you want this to continue, engage on a new work study and so on, and so on. Like it is not part of the organogram. So there was enough information to work on in the context also of the demand for the same budget general. And that is the same context that informed us that we should disband or remove the inspectorate. Same thought, same thinking. Wanted to optimize. We still need to optimize if we are to correctly or maybe meet the public and their expectations in terms of what is happening throughout the country in terms of policing. But if we keep things like this, it will be our choice to always, up to the end of the year, say one and the same thing and say, we are trying, we are trying, we are trying. When 400 people will be killed in 3 months or 4 months around here in the Cape Flats and so on, and other areas. To me, it is not ethical. To me, it is not morally justifiable to keep things as they are in terms of the use of the budget of SAPS without juggling it accordingly.
Okay. I'm asking this question, Minister, because the CFO is also due to appear before this ad hoc committee. Is it the evidence of the minister that there was no formal request for the CFO to submit an expenditure report in respect of the political killing system? The minister and the team just made an assessment throughout the work that they were doing since July 2024.
Based on information that was available, as I have indicated.
So you confirm that the CFO was not instructed to do an expenditure report?
The CFO did make written comments.
But
So
Minister,
I don't
you
want
say
that-
you say the written comments are on the basis of a request, and the request is rejected on the basis of budget cuts. It's a different thing, that one, from what we are discussing. We are saying the minister, the CFO, made comments declining or rejecting a request
Yes.
by the PKTT people for a budget.
Yes.
And the reasoning behind the CFO's rejection is not on the basis of the directives, but it's on the basis that the department has suffered again budget cuts, just like any other department that is suffering from budget cuts. So that's why I'm asking. Because what I'm asking is different from the response from what was requested. What I'm asking is that, is it confirmed by the minister here in this meeting that the CFO was never directed to submit an expenditure report of the political killings testing?
Now, you're asking a question. I am responding. And I would want to respectfully suggest that I be allowed to respond the way I need to, just like you ask the question the way you need to. So my response is that I considered a number of issues in relation to the budget, overall budget of SAPS, and the constraints that we are experiencing. Two, I consider the demands on the budget around particular specific areas, by the way, including even the forensic labs that we don't have. I considered all those matters. The fact that Treasury is not in a position to give you more money as you would have loved. And that includes even the numbers of SAPs that we have instead of those that we should. So all of those matters. The budget that is allocated to PKTT in relation to the tasks that they are supposed to perform and the value thereof when you compare. So I took those into consideration, but the figures were there. Now, I then conclude, so I don't want an impression to be created that when I wrote, I only had one factor, and so on. But out of all those things, then wrote the letter. Now, I'm giving you the context. But if you then ask me a narrowed question that says, before you wrote the letter on the 31st of December, did you call the CFO? I would say no, I didn't call her. But all the facts were in front of me, including on her comments herself in March, and all other factors like what was it designed for and how it happened.
Thank you. I think that will be enough. That will be satisfactory. So, has the PKTT been budgeted for the financial year 2025-2026, which started on the 1st of April 2025?
Now, I heard that National Commissioner said or overturned what CFO had said in March 2024, which I'm made to understand that she also made comments in 2025 about concerns in terms of monetary value, and that money has been provided. The last time I was aware was that National Commissioner was still going to consider the requested budget for 2025-2026. And I don't know whether the matters have been concluded to the effect that you now have money that has been provided. If so, I would still say that is money, in my view, that should be or could have been optimized and should be optimized along other areas that we now need, especially when in March this year, we have one fresh case of political killing in KZN. But you still budget the same as you would have done when there were 18 incidents or even 50-something incidents. So you would differentiate, you would adjust your budget. You would adjust your use of resources in a responsible way from where I sit, and that's my central argument.
Okay. Minister, it is common cause that the PKTT does not only comprise members of SAPS. You have got the National Prosecuting Authority taking part. We have got the State Security Agency taking part. We have got DPCI, Correctional Services, and other stakeholders. So what has been the value of their contribution, or else let me put it like this. What has been their contribution in respect of all the intention to disband the PKTT prior the signing of the regulations on the 31st of December?
Their role, insofar as cases that have been dealt with by the National Political Killings Task Team, has been significant. But you must also know that it is in the context of the cases that the National Political Killings Task Team is dealing with, as reflected by FACAS. In this case, when National Political Killings Task Team say we have one fresh case in 2025, it will be in that context, that contribution. In other words, in one fresh case. In a sea of matters, not only in KZN, national. And it is important to take cognizance of that fact. In a sea of other matters. That's exactly what is in the heart of my concern. When we start even using, as National Commissioner was saying in the Madlanga Commission, followed by the head of Crime Intelligence, Tumsan General Kumal, saying, in the National Political Killings Task Team, we don't use traditional methods of investigation. We don't use normal methods. We don't use usual methods. We use a different design that is expected to yield effective investigation. And I agree with them. It's a good model, by the way. I agree. But I questioned myself, what is the ethics of a distribution of resources in a manner that caters for a few people in an effective way, leaving aside the masses outside? What is the ethics there? And I decided that, look, we need to change this. We rather adopt that model, but national, especially in the provinces, including KZN, by the way, where there's a high rate of murders, which I had raised with all the people, the National Commissioner, deputies, and provincial commissioners in November. And I had raised a deep concern. So we rather take the model, if it is good, that we are using in the National Political Killings Task Team, and use it, if we want, even in the limited scale in the 4 provinces that are high murder zones in South Africa, than simply getting joy that, yes, PKTT is effective when every other people is murder, other people's murder, is just regarded as normal, relegated to traditional. I wouldn't want to believe that that is part of my responsibility. That is why I then said, no, look, we need to come up. The model is good, as I say. So direct your answer. They contributed well, but no longer to a point where we can proudly and say justifiably, especially if you look at the Constitution and imperatives of the 7th administration. We're not required to look at cases emanating from killings of certain specific people. You can call them elite or whatever. We are required to be interested in everybody. So you can't keep things as normal as they are. You've got to wake up, and you've got to wake up to the imperatives of this administration and behave accordingly.
Thank you. A second last short question. A person that goes by the name of Merdias writes a complaint to
name
you.
of?
Merdias.
Okay.
Writes a complaint to you and sends it on the 31st of October, complaining about the continued existence of the PKTT and how she thinks that the police service must be restructured. On the 31st of December, the same year, you write directives. Has Merdias influenced your decision?
Firstly, I must correct that impression that the only concerns that I had dealt with at the time of writing the letter of the 31st was those of Merdias. I have gone through, to all the corners of the Republic. And formally, I only had not gone to the Free State and the Northwest and Northern Cape, but I had gone to all other provinces. It shouldn't be just because other people and all the people that I saw couldn't write emails, which the House could do, then they must be taken for granted, and their voices must not be heard, or they must be ignored or suppressed. It is absolutely not true that the only voice that I took into consideration was those of the emails that came from Mary Haas, and therefore she has a decisive influence on me. It is not the case. What about people that I've been listening to all over complaining, including here? At one point, I listened to a group of 30 people here.
Our time is running out.
Time is up.
It's running
out.
We must break.
I think I can take it, Chair.
Has Professor Meridi Haas influenced you?
Yeah.
Did Mary Haas?
Influence your decision.
Not at all.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Not at all.
The last one.
I wanted to make
The last one,
clear.
Chair.
Not at all.
Just the last short one, Chair. The Premier of Gauteng, Mr. Panyaza Al-Sofi,
Yes.
wants his own political killing system in Gauteng. Are you going to give him?
Now, I've heard that through the media, but it's a case of the need for engagement because of the experience practically that we've acquired. That the unit, I believe, that the unit called organized crime, as demonstrated in the 3 cases,
Okay.
is quite effective. I wouldn't, in my engagement that I may have with Premier Panyaza, agree along those lines.
That's fine.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
Uyayifuna
honorable
uPanyaza
members.
lapha
Thank you
kithi.
so much. We